Hey listen, people and peopleettes. The Legend of Zelda series is an amazing series with arguably some of the best games ever created and a very passionate fan base. I mean, we all have those games that we just go back to time and time again. I feel like for me, if I miss Ocarina of Time or Wind Waker at least once in a year, I feel like I've completely failed as a fan of the series. Like, just take away my Zelda fan card. But today I want to talk about a game in the series that I feel is underrated. And to be honest, very underrated. I feel like people have actually opened up to it in recent years, but I still feel like it flies under the radar as a great game and a great experience. I'm of course talking about the origin story of the Zelda series, Skyward Sword. So let's discuss why I think this game is actually amazing and also the extremely shocking Metacritic scores. So I actually wanted to make this video a while ago, but it kind of got lost in the seas of my suspected neurodivergent mind and kind of just washed back up on shore recently, so here it is. As I mentioned, I feel like people do look at Skyward Sword in a better light than they once did, but I feel like it still gets hated on a lot. And I do want to say that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but out of 20 games in a series, when it's number 17 on your tier list, I feel like you're missing something. And I mean, if it's still what you think, if it's still number 17 out of 20, that's fine. But I know for me that Skyward Sword went up 5 to 7 slots on a tier list whenever the HD version came out. But we'll get back to that in a second, because before we get into those changes, I want to give a quick summary about what's the same between the two versions, which is the story. Skyward Sword's story is one of the loriest, if that's even a word, stories in the Zelda series, and though this is my opinion, one of the funnest. We get to see the origin story of the Zelda series in this game. You follow Link trying to save his friend / crush who has been suddenly taken from her home in the sky. We see how the reincarnation cycle of the Triforce Peeps start. The blood of the goddess, the spirit of the hero, and the hatred of Demise are all intertwined by Demise's curse on the hero in Zelda. I mean, if you're a lore junkie, this game is just chock full of stuff for you. I mean, you actually get to see the Master Sword created and aid in creating. But beyond the massive amount of lore and connections to other games, we also have the really great characters that we get to see in this game. In my opinion, some of the most memorable characters that we get in the franchise come from this story. These characters have way more depth and personality than a lot of other characters in other games, except Fi, who is literally like a robot, with no personality until the last 3 seconds of the game. I mean, it's a purposeful thing with her beep boop probability of you failing is 135%. I mean, she sounds like Basil Hawkins from One Piece for most of the game, but most characters have some depth to them. Zelda, Link, and Groose have some kind of love triangle going on, and Groose turns out to be more than a guy who just is jealous for Link for the first 10 minutes of the game. Yeah, we're looking at you. But even more, the NPCs seem to have more of a personality than I feel like they had in the past. Oh, and when talking about how characters affect the story, we cannot forget about my favorite villain in any Zelda game to date, Girahim. Girahim's like the Hisoka of the Zelda franchise, and while he's very cringe, he's also absolutely amazing to have in the story. I mean, his cringiness is what makes you fall in love with him. And he gives you this ick feeling sometimes, which for some odd reason makes you fall in love with his character even more. And the game makes you feel like he's just always watching you, looming over your shoulder, just showing you the little cutscenes where you can see Link traveling in the distance and Girahim is watching. It makes you feel like you're just constantly being stalked. Oh, and end of the game spoiler here on a game that's a decade old. One of the coolest reveals ever was he is basically the Fi of Demise. Like, I was blown away. But really, Girahim feels almost like the guy you're fighting for the whole game, and if Demise didn't have his whole dialogue at the end about the curse he puts on you, then I honestly feel like Demise wouldn't be that memorable. And he's the main boss of the game. Now let's get into the gameplay of the game. Now, this is a Zelda game that is made in the likes of Ocarina of Time and any other 3D game made between Ocarina of Time and Skyward Sword. But the big thing that deviated this game from those games and really any other game in the entire series is motion controls. Yes, Twilight Princess had motion controls, but not to the same altitude that Skyward Sword does. Like, everything you do in Skyward Sword is related to moving the Wii Remote, and I feel like this is where a lot of people got hung up on this game. I know I did. I've never been a fan of standing up to play a game or just sitting down and swinging my arms around. I want to just chill and basically be a potato. And after I finished my first Skyward Sword playthrough, I really didn't want to play it again for a long time. Like, it was enjoyable, but not enough for me to want to play it again. And for me, Zelda games are all about replayability. I've already played Tears of the Kingdom 3 times. One time upside down, by the way, on stream. Times in description for when I go live. Nice segue. But the replayability of Zelda games is one of the most important things about Zelda. And I just felt like it wasn't here for me in this game. And actually, I didn't replay it again until the HD version came out. Now, granted, I didn't play it the first time until about 2019 because I hadn't really been gaming for a few years. But still yet, I hadn't played it again. And then they announced the HD version, and I was ecstatic when they said there would be no motion controls. Like, I wasn't very hopeful for it before that, but when they announced it, man, I felt like I could have slapped Santa Claus. However, I was skeptical about it because I wasn't sure how it was going to work, but I was sold enough to go buy the game, just on the chance that it might be more playable for me. Turns out I was right. The controls were so much better when you didn't have to worry about the motion, and I felt like I could be immersed in the story more. There were some things to get used to with the moving camera and the sword both using the right stick, but once you got used to it and got it down, you was good to go. And it made the whole experience way better, at least for me anyway. I felt like the HD version as a whole unit took it on a tier list of 19 games at the time, from spot 10 to 12 to maybe a top 5, but if not almost there. Like, it really made that much of a difference for me. I guess, honestly, I'm really hung up on motion controls a lot, and if you are like me, all of that just drowned out the great story that was there. But the controls weren't the only thing that got better about the gameplay. There were several other improvements. Every time you picked up an amber or another item, now you didn't have to get the overwhelmingly annoying item description. I used to just avoid picking up stuff because the description was going to pop up. Like, really, who thought that was a good idea? Like, why? Also, Fee, Hylia bless her, was way less annoying. I mean, she wasn't telling me every 15 minutes to recharge my Wii remote because my batteries were going to die soon, and I also could ignore her in a lot of parts of the story where you couldn't before. These small changes made the game so much more enjoyable, and I think it's because they made the game way less like your little cousin who's walking around and following you and annoying you, and made it more enjoyable and fun. And this is where I get into the Metacritic scores, by the way, because I was super shocked by these. When I looked online, the Metacritic score for the Wii version is a 93, and the Switch version is a whopping 81. I feel like people used to take a dump on the game before the Switch version came out, but maybe it was more of like a Zelda fan score for the Wii version, and then once Breath of the Wild came in and kind of gave the Zelda series a boost in fan base numbers, maybe the 81 was from a broader audience, not necessarily the classic Zelda fans. Either way, I still feel like I hear people trash the game too often and just kind of disregard it as a good story, but maybe I'm just in some very toxic Zelda fan groups. I think I should also mention that though it's not a major upgrade, the game does look better on the Switch. I mean, I've heard complaints about how it kind of brings out some of the questionable texture choices that I guess they made in the world, but you can see them better. So I feel like they accomplished what they wanted as far as polishing it up. The only thing that I've actually heard was better on the Wii version are their motion controls are still better, because you can still play motion controls with the Joy-Cons. It's just a choice. I wouldn't know because I've not actually played it with motion controls because I did not go back. But if that is your cup of tea, I mean, maybe play the Wii version instead. I mean, we are talking about a game that is over a decade old, and if you were going to play it, you probably would have played it by now. But I mean, if you still haven't tried this game and you're a fan of the Zelda series, I would definitely recommend it because it is the origin story. And if you're like me and just hung up on motion controls, then it's way more playable on the Switch and way more fun. I mean, it made it way more playable for me. I mean, Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker will probably always be in my top 3, and I don't think that Skyward Sword can ever reach that point, but it could be number 5, I think, on my list. But this isn't really a video to persuade you to go buy the game. I just kind of wanted to address the fact that I feel like it's very underrated. And so I wanted to know what you guys think. Do you think it's underrated? And do you feel like the Wii version kind of shrouded the greatness of the game because of motion controls, or did you still get the greatness out of it? Like, was it still that fun for you? Maybe it was just me, and I hate to say it, that I didn't see the greatness that was there until I didn't have motion controls. But just let me know down in the comments which version you thought was better, and do you think it's underrated? Also, guys, hit that like, subscribe, and share with y'all friends and family. We're trying to get to 150 subscribers. Why? Because 150 is better, but we're really close, and I'm trying to get there before November. We've only got a few days left, but it'd be greatly appreciated, and thank you guys for everything. I will see you on the next one.